Hello, sir.
Hello, Chazi.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing?
Um, Doing well. I think I might have caught something from one of my kids, perhaps, but hopefully I'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Taking in the very devastating news with those three captives
Mm-hmm.
that were unfortunately killed by friendly fire. So, you know, horrible situation, of course. Um, so that was a little damper on the mood.
Yeah.
Not that the mood was so great, but yeah, it's obviously another hit to the gut. So it's a little difficult, but thank God. Aside from that, things are going well.
Well, that's good to hear that. At least, yeah, there's some things that are.
I'm sorry.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, I've been listening to those things. It's kind of like things feel like a roller coaster in terms of things happening all the time, and it keeps going up and down. So it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how much the world can stomach. Which we'll see how much Israel can stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Yet to be seen.
Yeah.
But hopefully, it'll go over, and we'll come out strengthened from this. I mean, it's very important. I also think for the country. I mean, on many levels, but just on the basic level of, let's say, the like sort of the emotional well-being of the country. Like, we need to come out of this moving towards the right direction. Like, I'm not even saying what that looks like, but
Mm-hmm.
there needs to be that we feel like we've moved to a new phase.
Right.
We'll see.
That there's momentum for something.
Um, all right. Where are we? On number 12? No, we did
I think
number
we did
12.
that. We did 12.
Yeah, we spoke about the different sequences between friend, rabbi, and teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Friend, rabbi, 1 second. Yeah, your teacher and your friend and your teacher slash rabbi, like your relationship with God. We clarified that we're not saying that we should see the rabbi like God. We did mention how uh, many times these things sort of switch off. Like, a friend is in certain ways like a rabbi, and like a rabbi is in a certain ways also like a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, we went a little deeper into that as well.
Yeah.
So number 13. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Have Zahir בתלמוד, ששגגת תלמוד עולה זדון. Oh yeah, okay. רבי שמעון אומר, 3 כתרים הן, כתר תורה, וכתר כהונה, וכתר מלכות, וכתר שם טוב עולה על גביהן. Rabbi Judah would say, be careful with your studies, for an error of learning is tantamount to willful transgression. Rabbi Shimon would say, there are 3 crowns, the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of sovereignty. But the crown of a good name surmounts them all. Okay, so we have nice lines over here. Here, the Rabbi Yehuda here, I believe, is not Rav Yehuda Nasi, Rav Judah the Prince that we've spoken about like in the past. Here, you're most probably talking about Rav Yehuda, which is Ben Eli, a student of Rabbi Akiva, and he was also, we mentioned in the past, the other study center named Usha. So he was very involved there. I believe he was also like more politically involved with things, like not only politically within the tourist center, but rather just with the people around up north as well. he was known to be the teacher of the Nasiim, the president. So he was also, as we always say, he was brilliant. He had many students, but many of them have their own unique elements to them.
Right. So he was like a tutor, like a mentor for the Nasim. So like the high society of the Jewish.
So we say that we should be careful with your studies, for an error in learning is tantamount to willful transgression. So, being careful in your studies. So this is fairly clear, which would be like, well, I would say seemingly it seems clear would mean be careful with your general studies, but really we're talking about to the conclusions you get to, and recognizing that you're speaking to others, and you could be confusing others as well. Right? It's not just you, as we've mentioned many times in the past, how chachamim yazerim b'divrehem, right, and how we're listening to. So there are interpretations that say that this is be cognizant about remembering what you learn. Right? Like, don't just be reading stuff and let it come in one ear and coming out the other. Rather, actually make sure you're understanding what you're learning. It's not asking the teacher the relevant question, right? As in, yes, he's your teacher, but you should feeling comfortable enough to be asking the things you don't know, right? If you be sitting in class and a lot of times the teacher says everyone understands and everyone's quiet, so he keeps on going. Really, no one understood, and like that would be like that's on you to speak up and sort of seize your learning, right? You gotta take it.
There's a dual relationship here, because at some other place it will tell us that the person that's teaching, you need to be careful because you want to like that you don't want to feed them poisoned water, right? I think that was one of maybe.
And like we were talking about earlier in the last section, which talks about how your student is also your rabbi. So here too, you could look at this. It's telling you to be careful with your students, and we're talking to the teacher over here, not to the one studying. Rather, we're telling him, don't read this as Talmud, as in read it as Talmid, and be aware that like what you're teaching, also you got to be very careful with that as well. And there's also an understanding over here that we're talking. The reason we're also saying over here that there is like a willful transgression is also because as you're learning this, you're getting to a place where you start getting like potentially heretical thoughts if you're not learning properly. And then the more you sort of dive into that, you're taking on more and more going into that doubt, even though personally I'm not such a fan of that interpretation, because I think, as we mentioned in the past, I think going through those gateways of doubt are sometimes necessary, and many times necessary in gaining more insight and a deeper connection. But obviously you have to go and swim in the deep end at certain times.
It reminds me, so it's like, it seems to me this is like, when you're putting yourself, when you're studying Torah, you should be aware that it has a lot of power, right? So it can go both ways, which is why you should pay a lot of attention. You should ask the right questions, because if you don't, you already put yourself in a position where you can be devastating if you don't do those things. It kind of reminds me of, I actually saw like some kind of video about like Jewish medical ethics and how they view like the fact that you, not necessarily that you're a doctor, but just that you know medicine or how to save people or to treat them. It makes you responsible. Like if you don't act in the moment, you are actually responsible. So you're abrogating your responsibility. And actually, it also reminds me that I'm involved in something where I'm going to have access to, I'm going to talk to children, right? So I'm going to have access to those children. And what was interesting to me, there was a law that was a part of like the orientation, was they told us that if we hear about something that the child is going through, some kind of like abuse or anything like that, then if I don't report it, then I can be responsible for, like I can be also charged with something, right? So I'm gonna put myself in a position where, I'm not the one that's gonna do anything, right? I'm just not reporting what I hear from the child, but putting myself in that position gives me the responsibility that an added responsibility that I need to report if I hear anything, and not just close my ears or anything like that. So
I think that's first of all, thank you for sharing that, and I think that's that's very, very relevant. First, just specifically, we have obviously in the Torah it says Al Ta'amod al Dam Recha, right? Don't stand on your brother's blood, but that means basically you don't be watching something horrible happening to something and do nothing. Or we have if you see someone's donkey can't fumbling and falling under their load, you have to go and not only help your friend but also help the donkey itself, right? So there definitely is a command for us to act and see, and Moses does that when he sees the Israelite and the Egyptian fighting, right? He must act. But specifically to what you were saying, yes, the fact that you are aware, it's sort of saying like, listen, if you're even being invited to this conversation, you're at some level of awareness. And because you're at this level of awareness and the responsibility is then, that you need to report something. So like what we're saying over here, which is why this is considered willful, is because in a certain sense, even though in some senses it's not true, but let's say in a certain sense it's true, the study of Mishnah and the study of the Bible, let's say scripture, is still less of like an intellectual like analysis, because it's more based on tradition. Mm-hmm. However, studying the Talmud is like demanding intellectual engagement, and if you are already playing with the intellectual engagement level on that level, then there's more responsibility. So even if it's accidental, it's still considered intentional, because you're stepping into you're playing with fire, so to speak.
Right.
So I think that was a very good example. All right. Then we move on to Rabbi Shimon. Right. So he said, Omer Shlosha Ktarim Hen, Keter Torah, Keter Kuna, Keter Malchut, Keter Shem Tov, Ole al Gebehen. Rabbi Shimon would say there are 3 crowns: the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, the crown of sovereignty, but the crown of good name surmounts them all. So Rabbi Shimon over here is our famous Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, which I believe we've already saw already in the past, but he was a student of Rabbi Akiva. He's obviously very famous now and well revered, but there's a famous line that Rabbi Akiva told him that it should be enough for you, Dai lecha, it should be enough for you that God and I know how great you are, right? Like, and he was sort of bringing in like the people in the know. So like, don't worry about like anything else. Famously, he is the lead character of the Zohar. We deal with Rav Shimon Bar Yochai constantly, or what he represents. There are famous midrashim called the Sifri that speak about different sections of the Torah. So some of them are from him, and they're beautiful, famous midrashim that one should study. And famously, he has a story of the cave. Right. He was fighting the Romans. He was there for years. To all who don't know, you're welcome to chime in and ask, and I will expand if needed. So he's talking about these 3 crowns. I think instinctually we could look at these as like symbolizing like Moses, Aaron, and David, right? King David, Aaron being the priest, Moses being the also from the tribe of Levite, however, representing the bringer, the giver of the Torah, right? Torah Moshe. Philo, or Yedidia, as he's called in Hebrew, he specifically, I think he believed there were 4 crowns. He has the prophecy crown as well. I think that even makes it into like classical Jewish canon, but I'm not recalling right now off the top of my head. But
there is a 4th crown.
like the prophetic crown.
Right.
Even though we're saying that there's the Keter Shem Tov, right? So this would be like the 5th crown.
Yeah. 4 plus 1. There's a lot of things that are like plus 1, right?
Right, plus 1, exactly. 39, Va'im Pachot Echad is minus 1.
Right. 18 plus 1.
Right.
Like that,
There's always place to add, right? We're always, just in general, the crown itself, when we're using this term, it symbolizes, in most countries, I would say, it symbolizes something that is like external and beyond the ordinary human, right? This is something that is like being put on top of him, and it's supposed to be transcending. So this is why we're using this term, the Keter itself.
Right.
And there's, when they're giving us like this, when they're giving us this breakdown, they're trying to focus, the mission is trying to focus on, again, we spoke about this with regards to prayer, but this this conversation from bottom up and top down, right? So we have the Torah crown, which is God comes and gives us the Torah and speaks to us, right? So that we have the coming from above to below. And then we have our conversation back to God through the priests, in a certain sense, right? That's bringing from below above. And then we have that stage, that mediator in the middle, which is the king, which is really supposed to take divinity and bring it down to the people itself. And this is less getting into the concept of a physical king, like a man, rather the concept, like the translation over here is in English, sovereignty as well. And kingship, you could say Torah kingship is easier to see because it's Torah, and the priesthood is very specific. With regards to kingship, these are things that are sometimes hidden because these are more divine. I mean, Jacob wouldn't like this, but I would say, let's say that the state of Israel is something that is humanly driven, but I would say that we can't see the divine nature behind these things, right? And that's why while it's being a process, I'm very okay if currently we're looking at it like an unbaked potato. I still see the invisible hand, so to speak, guiding it along, or at least that's what I choose or believe or have faith in. Famously, also just because this is we just finished the holiday of Hanukkah, so the Torah forbids really having the connection of priesthood and kingship together. That leads to disastrous results, whether it's complete mayhem because you don't have someone actually dealing with things properly from like the secular and governmental and political with its capabilities. And on the flip side, you also have a loss of divinity. You have a loss of religious identity once you have that combination, as we see that while the rabbis still respectfully talk about the king, the rulership of the Hasmonean kings as still the kings of Israel, nevertheless, internally, there was obviously a lot of criticism towards everything that was going on with the Hasmoneans, in a certain sense, also culminating in Herod and that problematic lineage as well. So here too, they're letting us know that there are these distinct crowns. However, it's also sort of a reminder that they're distinct in a certain way because we don't necessarily want intermingling between these two things.
Right, separation of powers in a modern term.
Right, and also because there's two that are more specific in a different sense, which is the kingship and the priesthood is something that's bestowed onto you or that you're born with. However, the crown of Torah is always for everyone's taking. As they say in the Gemara, the Torah munachat bekeren zavit, kol harotzeh yavo veikach. The Torah is in the corner. Anyone that wants it is welcome to go grab it and start learning. So, while it's a crown in its own sense, it's also still available to everyone at all times.
Right.
And lastly, we have, but the crown of good name surmounts them all. So the Keter Shem Tov is more important than all of these things. We also hear, in a certain sense, echoes to Derech Eretz Kadmala Torah, right? Like the good name, the way of the land, acting properly, being moral in a certain sense is a prerequisite sort of for the other three, right? So whether Derech Eretz Kadmala Torah in the sense of like you need those moral undergirding basics first. Here too, if we're even going to be talking about you being a king or you being a priest or you being a Torah scholar, you're going to first have to be a mensch, right? You're going to have and to be a mensch, you're going to be recognized as such if you're actually acting in that manner.
Right. Yeah. Because when you see people that are show themselves to be, let's say Torah scholars, and obviously this is like this is a real struggle I think that all religions have, like that you see the people that claim to be the Torah scholars, and then you see that they're not acting as mensches, if that's then there's a really big disruption in your own mind. And obviously that is a big
Chilul Hashem, like we spoke about.
Hashem, right? It's like
transgression,
beyond
correct.
your mind. It's Chilul Hashem. So it's a big thing.
And there too, it's sort of doubling down on if you're at that level, if you're playing the game at that level, if you're making mistakes, it's considered intentional. And there's another level to that, which is the way people perceive you, right?
Yeah.
Is also whether you could end up confusing them. The way them seeing you act that way is a desecration of God. So not recommended.
Yep.
Take notes, people. Write things down. There's a sense also where we could also look at the good name. If you're just a Joe Schmo, you're not even a Joe Schmo. You're Chazi Spiro. You're just a dude, right? But I'm not a priest. Well, I'm a Levite, but let's say I'm not a priest, and I don't see myself as a Torah scholar, and I am not a king, right? So I might have a good name, but I didn't really do anything so significant in my life necessarily. So it's not of great value that my name is good. It's important still, and like on my level, that's still important. However, you could say that for someone that takes on the role of kingship or of priesthood or of Torah at that level, right? Like we said, just like there's a high risk, high reward, right? If people are looking at you, but if you manage to come out of there with a good name, then that's the crown that's on top of all of those, because then like it shows that like this person, even though he could have let power corrupt him, or he could have been making up nonsense and then creating a desecration, or creating a travesty with regards to the priesthood or the monarchy. Nevertheless, here we see someone that's triumphant, and that's why their good name crown at that level is really what's the most impressive thing.
Right.
I'm just thinking about this also. In the Bible, we don't really even use the term crowned. I'm trying to think where we even have the term keter, crown. When I say keter, I think just in the story of Esther, but I could be wrong. So if anyone's out there listening or could Google check if the crown is anywhere else, either way.
Is there anything, because I mean, and this goes back, this is not something recent. This goes back when I learned this at school, but isn't anything about like anointing kings in terms of in oil, which is, I don't know if that is related to crown.
The term the Torah uses is nezer. Right, that's the two they use for, let's say, or a zer, which also connects to Zohar, because Shemen Hamishcha, when you put it on your forehead, it would shine, right? And that's like this shining, this zer that you're giving yourself, this halo that you're giving yourself, so to speak. I was going to go a different direction, but just with regards to your saying, in theory, there is reason to believe that is that ceremony is already coming with Abraham in his theological suitcase from Haran, because there's evidence that already there were some of those moves happening at that time, but seemingly that comes through and gets appropriated through our tradition as as a way to really mark someone being the king. So like the prophets do that to King David and to other people, and they pour oil on their head, and this is to show that their head is glowing. This is the crown of divinity on top of their head. But why that relates to the Nezer is that there are three kelim. Blanking on the word right now, but
vessels.
There are three vessels in the temple which correlate to these crowns. We have the ark, which obviously correlates to the Torah, because the tablets and the broken tablets are there, and we have the lechem hapanim, which is like the bread that's prepared, and that is to symbolize sustenance and abundance and like a healthy economy, which is also to represent kingship, which was ruling as far as on that level. And then we also have the golden altar, which is for the incense altar, and that is done by the priests. However, and again, I'm sorry, Jacob, Rav Kook thinks that, and all these three were known to have a zer on top of them, a crown on top of them as well, like their own halo that they create from the fire that they create, or the smell, the steam that's coming out of the bread, or the Torah, the Ark of the Covenant having its own glow from its being also gold. And all these things are gold here. Almost all of them are gold. But Rav Kook said that the one that doesn't have, it has its own light, inherent light into him, is the menorah, the candelabra, and that is not inside the Holy of Holies. Actually, it's further out, and that's for all the world to see. And that's in a certain way what Rav Kook says is like the hidden quality of Israel, which is that like in a certain way it even transcends the crown of Torah itself, which is really the relationship God has with us as a nation. But again, perhaps that's too right. You know what? No, that's not a problem. I said that nation. That's not necessarily even the state of Israel. It's just the nation of Israel. Jacob should love it.
Yeah, it could be interpreted in a reasonable way.
Let's scroll down.
Let's do it.
You want to read?
Yeah. רבי נהוראי.
Oh yeah. Okay.
נהוראי אומר, היה גולה למקום תורה, ואל תאמר שהיא תבוא אחריך, שחבריך יקימוה בידך, ואל בינתך אל תשען. Rabbi Nehorai would say, exile yourself to a place of Torah. Do not say that it will come after you, that your colleagues will help you retain it. Rely not on your own understanding. Okay.
All right. So Rabbi Nehorai. Some people say it is another name, synonym for Rabbi Meir, that we've mentioned also in the past. And some, I think the interpretation was it's a nickname. I don't know what it's a nickname for, but it's used as like Nahor, like lighting up. Like he would lighten up the faces of the rabbis with his Torah study, because you know it, he was
brilliant.
He was brilliant. He knew it all.
No, it might be a good literal translation for brilliant, right?
Right, exactly. He was the official one. By the way, you could see just in the first line over here is like the story of the Israelite, basically the Jewish person, like exile yourself to a place of Torah, to 40 years in the desert to come back to Israel. There's this whole sense of like us constantly going through our ups and downs and needing to move out to the fringe to come back to the center. So there's that movement over there, but I would say the more streamlined interpretations are that you should exile yourself to a place of Torah, and we're using such harsh terms, is because while you could say that, well, the let's say the more harsh interpretation would be, you need to leave your current space, even if it's a space of where there's real Torah happening, because you want to move out and gain different perspectives, right? You want to be out there in out there in the world and sort of seeing different points of view.
Right, which relates to the last sentence of the Mishnah.
Correct. And there's another sense, which is exile yourself to a place of Torah, which is you could be studying in your little local hall, but if you want to play in the big leagues, then go to the NBA. You know what I mean? Like, go there where they're studying at the highest level, and that's where you need to be sending yourself. And there's an exile feeling over there, because, like we said, you need to leave the material world and you need to transcend it in a certain sense, because that's what the Torah is telling you it is. It's saying, I'm transcending this, and it almost requires us to do b'ze'ir ampin, in a small way, the same thing, to show that we too are willing to leave, let's say, our current status and exile ourselves, move out to a different place, to a different realm, so to speak.
Yeah, this is very interesting. It almost feels like Rabbi Noah had something, like he felt, and it almost feels like modern in terms of like he didn't like a warning, more so than others, or a premonition or a warning.
So you could see this as he goes on with what he says in the end over here, and we mentioned this also in the past, which he talks about his friends, and then he talks about also like your own understanding. So right. The sense over here, which is, again, it's harsh. You got to leave your home, family, and let's say childhood behind, because when you're trying to explore and learn new things, right? Like, friends are going to keep you sort of in your own mindset, and you're looking to gain new insights and do new things, and you want a teacher to sort of take you to that next level. So you need to, again, remove yourself from those places. And in exile, in a certain sense, being in exile allows you to really, we go on cleanses today, but it allows you to focus in a certain sense, and then start noticing the quote unquote secrets out there that could be attained, because you are now focusing on the signal, and there's a lot less of that noise. There's a sense also that they're talking about the friends over here, which is, don't assume that your friends they're going to study for you, and you could just lean on them and be like, whenever I need to know something that's worthy, I'm just going to speak to them. And sort of, in a certain sense, allow yourself to be like the joker of, or the lazy one of the group, which just, sort of leans on the others. Rather, it's telling you, again, a call for action, both from exiling yourself and to take responsibility. No one's going to do the work for you yourself. You got to be, you got to clean your room, as Jordan Peterson likes to say, which culminates in what I think is the last statement over here: rely not on your own understanding, right? So get out of the echo chambers. Don't assume you could comprehend everything yourself. Even if you are in a place of true Torah, we spoke about this earlier, and you are very brilliant, you should still be collaborating with others. Like we spoke about that the one judge, even if he could judge alone, he should still not judge alone. While there's other levels of risk that he's exposing himself to, that he wants to safeguard himself to, still, in a certain sense, don't assume you're gonna build your own intellectual palace and try to understand everything by yourself, right? Again, you want to establish new ideas, and the word binah is to lahavin davar metoch davar, right? To understand something from within itself. Now, that's a great talent. However, if you're only by yourself, and this sort of alludes to the echo chamber, at a certain point, you've wasted your wells, right? Like you're understanding things from within your own little loop, and you need new insights to try to now crack open and now actually understand. So again, it's, don't assume you could do this all on yourself, or don't lean on your own intellectual capabilities.
Right. And Al tomar she'tavo achrecha, and like, do not say that it will come after you. So you exile yourself to a place of Torah. What does it mean that do not say they will come after you? What are you supposed to do?
That relates to the interpretations that go along with saying that you could even be in a place where there's real Torah right now, but still exile yourself, or you yourself could know Torah. Don't assume that you'll become the center, right? You'll become Usha, you'll become Yavna. People are just going to come to you and flock. Rather, even if you are LeBron James, like we said, if you're in the NBA, if you're just playing on the streets, it's not going to be the same level if you're playing with the rest of your colleagues. And they're not going. And the NBA, even if LeBron James leaves, is not all moving to where he's moving to. Right. At the end of the day, Cleveland can rise and fall. There's a franchise. So it's telling you that on that level, don't assume it's going to come after you, and or on the flip side that your colleagues will retain it. If you're not the one that they're going to come after, and they're going to come after your friends, let's say they're the big deal. At that point, don't assume that either. Don't rely on them.
Right. So this is a lot about being proactive.
Correct.
Proactive in moving, proactive in bringing something into it, proactive in bringing corresponding with Torah, and not just anticipating that it will give you all the insights that you need without your own understanding, but then also understanding that your own understanding is not enough. Sorry about that, but yeah. So
I mean, we speak about this often, but this is the pattern of our religion in a certain sense, which is very much this embodied practice from the moment you wake up till the moment you go to sleep, and it's constantly compounding in a certain sense, which is remember that you need to be studying. While you're walking, you should be studying. And when you have a moment to think, which is not walking and not thinking about studying, you should exile yourself to a place of study where you could focus on the studying. Now, there's always these little caveats, which is the crown of a good name. These are the prerequisites, right? The person that did this really studied for 40 years, right? Rabbi Akiva was wise enough to understand, if I look at water and I see a drip on a rock and eventually make a hole inside, I can realize from this that, you know what, maybe I need to study a lot more. Maybe there's a lot more that could change in me, even though I'm 40 years old. And there's recognizing that at all times you should be looking at the world and engaging with the world at this level. And even like we said, when you wake up in the middle of the night, don't doom scroll. That's the time to do X level of introspection.
Yeah.
Arguably, we would say that the watching The Crown with your wife, right, is, again, in a certain act, also doing Torah, right? Because that is securing and developing and nurturing your relationship, which is a good value,
right?
Yada yada yada. All right. Next. All right. Rabbi Yanai Omer, אין בידינו לא משלוות הרשעים ואף לא מיסורי הצדיקים. רבי מתיה בן חרש אומר, הווה מקדים בשלום כל אדם, והווה זנב לאריות, ואל תהי ראש לשועלים. Rabbi Yanai would say, we have no comprehension of the tranquility of wicked, nor the suffering of the righteous. Rabbi Matya, the son of Harash, would say, be first to greet every man, be a tail to the lions, rather than the head to the foxes. That's a very, very famous line. Rabbi Yanai, with this like Job, a very pessimistic sort of outlook over here. Well, I guess we'll get into that. But he was after the Zugot, before the Amoraim, the interpreters. He was a young student of Judah the Prince, not Judah ben Eli that we mentioned earlier. He too had many students. I don't know if they said he was brilliant, but he had many students. Oh, but fun fact, he did practice what he preached, which is Torah ve'avodah. He had I think it's up north, his own study hall up north, and there, I believe, half the day, a portion of the day was doing actual work. Like all the students worked and did, had that combination of both those elements, while believing that doing work within itself is also a version of Torah values and manifestation as well. So, so I would say, first off, linguistically, there's something, I don't know if this is true in English, but the opposite of Yisurim in Hebrew, I don't know if it's tranquility, or like it's not shalva, it's ta'anugim.
Right.
And the sense is, the reason, what I was saying in Hebrew was that suffering, the opposite of suffering, here it says tranquility, which is more like peace, and not necessarily like more than peace, like a joyous like occasion. Peace is sort of more like that middle level in a certain sense, or it's being content. And the reason I think, or as also some have interpreted, but I resonate with this, is that it's telling you that yes, you're going to see the wicked prosper, so to speak, or be tranquil. However, that's all they get to. It's not more than that. So for them, in a certain sense, it seems like they have this peace, but they're not really getting to that level of tanugim. They're not really getting that real reward at the end of the day. But using the term over here, lo biyadenu, and we don't have the comprehension, it's saying we really can't understand these elements. And it's sort of telling us that no one has a fully horrible life or a fully amazing life necessarily. Everyone is always sort of in the middle. And it's the outlook should be that, assume you're in the middle, and that's why your actions carry a tremendous amount of weight, right? You could tip it towards the right, you could tip it towards the bad, as we talked about also before, the days of awe that come to us in our Jewish holidays. But either way, again, this is fairly pessimistic sort of outlook. It's not really giving us an answer. It's more telling us that, like, you're going to see this is going to happen, and you're not going to be able to fathom or really comprehend what's happening over here. And that's why try to, in a certain sense, accept it and accept your position in this seemingly unfortunate turn of reality when we see how it presents itself. Questions on that, or that sounds good?
No, I think
you're depressed enough.
I'm depressed. Yeah, that's it. You got me. I just heard. No, I don't think I remember this enough, but I'll just mention it. But there was something about. I just heard somebody say, maybe this is somewhere in the prayer, we say about, like, don't. Al titen oti leisurim rabim, or don't hand me into a lot of suffering. And it's important that we say surim rabim, like a lot of suffering, or because we understand that some suffering might be something that we will.
It's a feature. It's not a bug.
But we hope that it's not going to be a lot.
Correct. We hope it won't be a lot, and then we have to also differentiate between how much of that is our own doing, right?
Right.
Like,
I think that
how much. And we spoke about this, about paying it forward, and like, what our intentions and what our actions and what our words bring, and the obviously the Mishnah and the rabbis are being very sensitive to this and telling us how careful you need to be with your words because of these things. And yeah, I agree. Rav Matya ben Charash says, so he's actually an interesting character. He was in Yavne for a while. There was a time where he wanted to leave after the devastating loss in the Bar Kokhba revolt. he decided to leave Israel. But when I think he gets to the shore, or he gets to the boat and he starts crying. He says, "I can't leave." However, he does eventually leave. He goes to Rome, and there he's known as a brilliant rabbi, and rabbis should go to him. They say it's worth it to go to Rome, even though Israel has its tensions with Rome. It's worth it to go, to Rome to go study with him. And even Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, which we mentioned also a few sections ago, he too, when he emerges from the cave and goes to Rome to pray for Israel's behalf on certain issues that they're dealing with, and he would meet with him, and they would first have a strategic session of how to go about the Roman debates, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
He would give him his prep. So he tells us, Havei magdim b'shalom l'chol adam, right? So we've seen this already before, how it's very, very important to see the intrinsic value in every single person, to recognize, and this goes back to the prerequisites of the Keter Shem Tov, of having the good name crown, right? Like if these are the way you act, then if you could start having the conversation of being recognized as king, prophet, or priest. But first you need to get to those levels, you first have to recognize all the other individuals. Ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha, right? Love your neighbor like yourself.
Yeah.
All the way to God, like we mentioned in the past, Moses saying that I see God's face like I see my fellow man, right? That's where you could see the true image of God inside.
Yeah, and it's almost like this actually reminds me of something that I was studying yesterday, like some Maimar. I don't know what a translation for Maimar of the Rebbe. It's too like I don't know, like just Maimar, a lecture of the Rebbe or something. But he walks through this pattern of.
I'm listening. I'm looking for Maimar as well.
Yeah, no. So he walks through this pattern he gives a few examples for a pattern, right? You have, for example, the rabbis before maybe you start teaching anything, or really on any other subject. Maybe you might start with something a little bit. Well, you start with small talk, but you might start with a little levity, a little joke, and in some way that kind of opens up the crowd, opens up the person to accept to be more inclined to learn, and to go into this kind of like a more intellectual effort. So I can also see that in terms of when you are the first to greet every person, when you're a nice to a person, that person is much more inclined to accept the yoke of your authority in some way. And we kind of spoke about it before about justice. Like you actually in order to enact justice, you actually need people that will accept the justice upon them. Like there's only a certain extent where you can actually, be forceful enough, but people also need to accept the game, right? So it's very helpful to engage with these things.
I couldn't agree more. And we've mentioned in the past how we were talking about one needs to be mindful about not, we spoke about how there's being, what was the word in English, but there's sort of laughter, and then there's sort of focusing or stressing the levity of the situation and the humorous of this, or sort of being like the comic relief constantly. And there we spoke about how doing that constantly creates sort of chaos. Mm-hmm. However, right. A certain amount of that at the beginning of, let's say, an article or a conversation allows us, like that kind of laughter allows us to move from a place of where seemingly there isn't answers, and going into a place where limits could be pushed, right? It allows you sort of to go into this new space where you're more open to ideas and more welcoming, again, if it's oriented and contained properly. So, right. So too, a hello, right, to someone and saying it first, you've already opened up this new realm, which is already quote unquote safe space, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's not, Jordan Peterson talks about how when you go into a room right? Like if there's another man over there, like at some point you're also thinking, if I need to, can I beat this person, right? So there's another sense where you're sort of taming that nature part of you, and you want to bring in like, I'm not looking at the beast that I know I could also be, rather I'm looking at the man inside, which I know I am also. And that level of conversation is a lot less fighting and a lot more welcoming.
Yeah.
So we then have this famous line, I've heard in the past that this is happening, and we've seen this in other sections of the Pirkei Avot, that this is in a certain sense a silent conversation going on with the rest of the world. And here we see at this time Julius Caesar is famously saying, I'd rather be the king of like the village in Gaul than the second in Rome at that time. There was someone like, I think, I can't remember who, but there was someone in charge of him. And there was like a certain sense that here we see sort of the take that this is the take that the Jewish people have, which is no, you rather be the tail, right? You rather be the second in command if it's someone worthy to follow, and not be the king of Gaul necessarily. So it's always interesting that you have this conversation going over here. But as far as this specific example, right? So you could see that the Mishnah or the rabbi is focusing specifically on a category and a specific part, right? The difference between, which is he's emphasizing the category.
Category being the animal, or what do you mean?
Correct.
Yeah.
And not the part, right? You would think like, no, it's all about being the head, or it's all about being the tail. And he's saying, no, it's about being part of the right leadership, being part of the right grouping, right? Which is, you could look at it as someone that is a fox, where seemingly we're calling a fox like sly. There's cunning to it, which could seem impressive, but it's limited, right? It's constantly using tricks or sort of surface level understanding to try to make a bigger impression. However, a lion, in a certain sense, it doesn't need to flex its tail. Everyone knows it's the tail of the lion, because the lion itself is already representing a true, real sense of something authentic. And that's why even being a tail to something like that is still more worthy. In a certain way, it also relates, not in a certain way, in a classic Pirkei Avot sense, it relates to the beginning that we said, greet every person, right? Which is there too, we assume every person, you could say that, oh, but this guy's just a tail. And we're saying, yes, even the tail matters, right? So this person that isn't the president or the king or the big shot, let's say he's just a lowly tail. But nevertheless, we see him as the image of God, and that's why we see him as the tail of the lion. Yeah. And for us, that is obviously a lot more impressive.
Right. It's like, what are you part of, right? Like what group or what, you can call it also ideal. It's important to understand or to be intentional about what part of ideal or plan you are a part of. If it's the plan of the fox, which is, like you said, is sly or is like has a certain way of living, versus the way of the lion, who has a certain position, and also embodies something that is, at least from our, like the metaphor that we put on that, is something a little bit more royal and high, then that is what you want to be a part of.
Yes. There's also a sense which, just again, speaking about the body part, emphasizing the body part here, is that you could work on your intellect, which could give you a great benefit, right? However, if you neglect the other parts of your body, right, metaphorically speaking, you're limited. You're going to only end up being the head of the foxes, which is like it's a skinny, weak body, so to speak, relatively speaking. And yes, there's a great head, but how far can that take you? Well, however, the lion, right, it recognizes that not only does it work on it being a lion, but even the small aspects from the tail to the paws, every part is also important over here. And it's, again, representing a more sort of wholesome feel of the animal and not just focusing on the intellect.
Right.
I think we'll